Hey guys, it's Ben, and today I'm going to be walking through the Traverxec HackTheBox challenge. This was an easy rated Linux box, which was fairly straightforward, and it was quite fun as well, so I'll get on with it. I've got the box up and running, as you can see. I'm going to copy the IP address to bring that to my clipboard, and I do have an mmap command pre-written here. I'm going to quickly walk this through. So I'm scanning the IP address there, and then I'm doing TACP to scan all the ports. We want full coverage. TAC-SV to do a version service enumeration check. TAC-SC to do the default NSE scripts. This will give us a bit more information onto the individual services and ports which are open. TAC-PN to not send a ping check, and TAC-N to not send a reverse DNS resolution check. These two are just to make the scan run a bit quicker. TAC-T4 is also to increase the speed, and then we're going to output that to fullthorough.log. I have previously run this command, and I've got the output there, so let's inspect this. We can see two ports are open, 22, which is SSH. We can see the software running the SSH service is OpenSSH. We've got a version there as well, and then we've also got HTTP open on port 80, the default port, and it looks like the software behind that is Nostromo. I personally have never I never heard of this web server before this challenge, but now I have, and I've learned something new. So let's check out this website, and one thing I want to do is add this IP address to our host file. This will allow us to reference the host name instead of referencing the IP every time, which can get a bit tiresome. So we can go sudo vi etc hosts. I can see I've already added it there, but look, we've got the IP address and then we've got the host name there. So I should now be able to ping Traverxec, and I can ping that instead of pinging the IP. So that's all up and working. Obviously we can see there's port 80 is HTTP, and then we can see the title is Traverxec, and the server header is Nostromo 1.9.6. We can just go to traverxec.hackthebox, and we can see the web page here. Hello, my name is David White, I create for the web, and it looks like to be some web design UI development page. We do see something about Lauren Ipsum there, so this is basically like a template page, nothing really too interesting going on. I do like to go down and hover over some of the buttons to see if they go anywhere. We can see in the bottom left hand corner this redirects us to the /hashtag, which takes us just back to the same page. It doesn't do anything interesting. If you look at these images here, if we hover over that, it does take us to the actual raw image file, which isn't interesting at all, and then to the left of that also takes us back to the top. So there's nothing interesting on this web page itself. We could perhaps, I'm selecting that, so we could perhaps look at the source code and see if there's anything in here. We could also check for, like, is there a robots.txt which may be misconfigured to leak a directory which shouldn't be shown. In this case, no, there isn't. And there's nothing on the source code either. I always like to check out the web technologies over here, and I've got Wapalizer to do that. It's an add-on you can get for Firefox, and you can just see what web technologies are in use, what is the web stack. In this case we can't really find anything interesting here. Sometimes it may tell us that PHP is the backend server language, or it would give us the web server. We have already found the web server, and that is Nostromo 1.9.6. I personally I've never heard of this web server, so you may want to just do a Google Dork, or you may want to go Nostromo and then Google Dork the versions and see what we discover. And searching for that web server name with that version, we instantly find multiple proof of concepts for remote code execution vulnerability. So it's clear straight from the beginning what we have to do to get this initial access. We've got RCE, so let's have a look. Obviously, exploit DB. this is sort of synced up with searchsploit, so we'll be able to download that locally. Obviously, you can clone these repositories here and also get the POC that way, but it's already on our machine. We can go searchsploit, nostromo, and then we can see there's a directory traversal vulnerability, and there's also the remote code execution. Obviously, directory traversal is for a different version, but yes, this RCE is for this version here. So we can just go searchsploit tac-m, and then we'll control SV and paste that there. This will download it there. I'm going to move this exploit into the exploits directory and call it poc.py. I'm going to cd into the exploits directory. I always like to open up my proof of concepts in Sublime Text and just have a look. We do see this line up the top here, which obviously doesn't look like Python. This will cause an error for some reason. I don't know why this was left here. This can be commented out or removed, because if you try to execute that, that will cause an issue. And we can see it's a fairly simple proof of concept, right? It looks like there's some sort of directory traversal going on, and then it looks like there's some returns and some new line special characters, and then we use the dot format and then the command, and then it looks like we're literally just putting the plain text command, which we pass in the command line arguments to be executed. So it's quite a neat POC, I can't lie. Oh yeah, and when we did the directory traversal, we traversed up to bin.sh, and then from bin.sh you can just put in a command as input, it looks like. So let's give it a go and see if we can get some command execution. We can try Python on POC, and we can see we get that's not defined. I need to save it. Have another look now. There we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So it asks us for a target IP, target port, and the command to run. In this case, the target IP, we can choose the IP of the box, or we could choose the host name, which is Traverxec.HackTheBox. And yeah, we can see that the port is the default port HTTP for HTTP, and that's 80. The command, let's just run ID. We can see we get a bytes-like object as required, not string. So it doesn't indicate what version of Python to use, I don't think. But you may have noticed, does it? No. You may have noticed, or you may have seen this error before, and that's typically something to do with the Python version. So you may want to just try Python 3. No. What about Python 2.7? And we get a response. We get the response of the ID command, and that is, we can see that the user which is executing the command is dub-dub-data, which is fairly typical. Fairly nothing special. Typically, web servers are run by the dub-dub-data user. We can also run like who am I, ls, pwd. Obviously, running commands like this in the command line isn't efficient. We want a reverse shell. We want a functional shell where we can move up and down directories. We can change users, and unfortunately, we don't have this in this little proof of concept. However, we can go over to revshells.com. Great resource for generating reverse shells. We can see the IP up there is pre-filled to my VPN IP, which we can see I'm just moving my face up there, 10.10.16.4. The port I tend to listen on is 44444. It's just habit. You may want to pick a proof of concept here to use. Obviously, you can only use the Linux ones. In my case, this Netcat MK FIFO. This is quite reliable. I tend to use this. Obviously, it pre-fills it with our IP and port, so we can just copy this as the command to be executed, and we can get a Netcat listener going, so we can listen for a connection coming back, and then on this screen here, we can make the connection out by pasting the proof of concept. Pasting the command to be run for the reverse shell call out in the proof of concept, command to be executed, I haven't actually pressed enter on that. Enter on that, we get a callback, we get a reverse shell. I'm going to move this over so you can see it a bit better over here. So we've got a shell, but it's not perfect. There's a few things I always do once I've got this initial shell, and this is to get a more functional shell where I can use commands like sudo and I can change user, and that's upgrading it to a TTY shell. You can do that in Python, however we don't know the version of Python which is on the box. A quick way to check this is say which, and you can see Python 3. Python 3 is on here. You may actually check Python. It looks like both versions of Python on there, so Python 3, and you go import pty, pty.spawn, bin bash, and we've upgraded to a TTY shell now, which is neat. You may want to clear your screen, but we can see we get that error, the term environment variable is not set, so we can export term equals xterm, and now we can clear the screen. We can set the term environment variable. Nice. So obviously we've got the shell of the data user. We can go to the home directory and see what other users are on this box, and we can see there's this David user. Okay, can we go to the home directory? Is it easy as that? Yes, we can go to the home directory. Can we list the files out? We cannot. So there's a good chance, I know for fact, that the user flag is in the David's home directory, as they are in most of these HackTheBox type challenges. So I guess we want to privilege escalate to David. There's a few checks I always like to do when I get my initial access to see if there are any quick wins. One of them is checking the sudo capabilities I have as the current user, and you can just do that by running sudo tackl. In this case, we're prompted for a password, so we don't know the password. We can maybe take a guess, do the hostname of the box, Traverxec. What about nostromo? I think that's what the server's called. We could do data. We don't know the password. We're just guessing. It doesn't really matter. But in this case, we couldn't guess the password. I also like to check, are there any suid binaries? So these are binaries, executables, which you're able to run with the permissions of the owner of the binary. So certain binaries, you can get a shell out of it, and if you can get a shell out of the binary and it happens to be owned by root and you're running as the permissions of root, you can get a shell as root. So we can use the find command to find all suid binaries. So I'm going to find from the top level directory the type F, I'm looking for files, not directories or any other type of files, and then the perm, I'm looking for the user bit on the permissions to be set to S, which is the suid bit. So I'm looking for files with the suid bit set, and then I'm going to redirect all errors to dev null, so I don't see the errors pop up on the screen. I only see the real suid binaries, and we can run this, and we can see we get a list of these suid binaries. However, not all of these can be used to privilege escalate and get a shell. A good resource if you want to confirm whether a binary is exploitable for privilege escalation is GTFObins. GTFObins, quickly go to it. You can just search up the binary you're looking for, so let's just pick one as an example. Let's just pick mount, and we can see it does have a privilege escalation capability, but it's only if we have sudo permissions, and in this case we're looking for suid binaries, so you may want to just look, just for example, these are all the binaries which you can use which you can use to privilege escalate if they have got the suid bit set on them and they're owned by root or owned by another user. So I see these binaries pop up a lot. They're your default binaries which are suid. None of them are exploitable to privilege escalate, so we can't use that. I also, one of my other checks I like to do is just check the cron tab. Are there any default running tasks which run, and we could perhaps exploit those to privilege escalate if they're running under root. In this case, there are not, so we cannot do that, which is fine. I also, before I basically download limpies, I like to check the web server files. By the way, I didn't mention there, limpies is a privilege escalation enumeration script for Linux. It's great, it finds a lot of juicy information, gives you a massive output. However, I like going there as a last resort, as there are a few manual checks you can do first, and you may find some juicy information out of those. So I always like, if there's a web server or a website involved, I like to go look at the source code or the configuration of the web server. Typically this is in var dub source code. We see we don't get anything there, so let's just cd into var, and we can see there's a nostromo directory. So we can just go into this, and we can see we've got a conf, which probably contains something about the configuration, HTDocs, which we can have a look. HTDocs, this looks like it contains the source code, but there's a readme, which is interesting. There's also an empty.html, which is interesting. So let's just cat the readme.txt, and it says thank you for downloading this template. Obviously that's not needed at all. There's that empty.html we can have a look at. It says no mail sent, not finished yet, please come back soon. That was interesting, but we don't really get much out of it. We could perhaps see if this user has any mails, or are there any mail servers, stuff going on like that, but we've got other stuff to dig into first. Let's have a look at the config. We may be able to reveal something interesting here. There's this nhttpd.conf, we can cat this open, httpd.conf, and we can see the server name, traverxec.HackTheBox, and then we've got this server admin David, server root, tells us about some logs. The user, which is running the web server, is dub.data. We know that as we've got a shell as dub.data. It says something about HT password, which is interesting, right? So sometimes that may contain the HTTP authentication credentials, or the hashes for that. So we can see that is in the current directory, but it's obviously hidden because it's prepended with a dot, so that doesn't, that's hidden when you do your regular ls, but if you do an ls tag la, this shows hidden files as well, and we can see that HT password. We can cat this open, HT password, and we can see we can recover a hash here. You may identify this hash from first sight to be MD5 crypt. If not, you could probably do a search or a Google. If you're unsure about a particular hash type, take the first few strings, and in some cases you can take the first few strings and you can just do like hash type or hash, and then in this case the prefix is used to identify MD5 crypt. You can also just throw it straight at John the Ripper, to crack it. So perhaps this is the password for the David user. What we can do, we can make a directory, and I'm going to zoom in on this as well. Make a directory called PE, privilege escalation. I'm going to make hash David. I'm just going to paste that in there. Nope, I don't want to paste that. I want to paste this. And I'm just going to throw this at John the Ripper. The word list I'm going to use is your go-to user share word list rocku, and it probably say no password hashes left to crack. I've previously already cracked this, and John has a memory, and a memory of the previously cracked hashes. So in this case I can just go tac show, and this will show me what the password is. In your case, if you were doing this for the first time, it would take a little while to work through the word list, and eventually you'll get the password. And in this case it's now only for me. That was the password, so we can just copy this, and we can see if we can change our user to David with this password. Now only for me. Nope. And what about root, perhaps? Nope. So that's actually quite refreshing. This user hasn't reused his password in multiple places. You could obviously try something like this, put an exclamation mark on the end, or 1, 2, 3 exclamation mark, just play around with it. I tried that and I didn't get anywhere. However, I did see something else in the config file, which was interesting, and this was about home does, which was quite strange. And there's this forward directory home, and then home does public, and then public dub. This confused me, as this is not something you typically see in a configuration file for a web server. So you can do some googling, right? You can do some googling for this specific web server, Nostromo, home does, and we'll see what we can find. There is a hacking notes on it, and we can have a look. We can also look at the man page for Nostromo, and we can go to home does, and we can see part of the configuration. Okay, something else, the better one. To serve up home directories for your users, enable the home does option by defining a path where the home directories are stored, and that's normally home in this case. To access a user's home directory, enter a I think it's called a tilde. I just want to check tilde. Yeah, I think that's tilde character. Yes. So yeah, to access a user's home directory, enter a tilde in the URL followed by the home directory name. So this, for example. In this case, we can do that. We know the user is David, and it has been configured in the config file. So we may be able to go like this and go David, and we can see private space, nothing here, keep out. So we can have a look at this. We can have a look at the source code here, and it looks like it's including this sort of image with the directory of the image there. But we can access the home directory, which is really interesting. So you may want to look around from here. I don't know what you could do, but at this point, this I had a click, and I realised something, right? So we're running as the data user, and we are trying to when we visit the website and we go to this David home directory, it's able to read from David's home directory. However, when we try to go to the cd home David, when we try to ls and access the files there, we get permission denied, and we are running as data. However, when we do it through the website, which is also running as data, it's able to access it. And then I realized in the config file there is this public dub, which is the directory which is accessible to the web server. You can also see this in here, it references it. So what we can now do is we know there is a directory which we do have access to in David's home folder, because the data user is able to access it through the browser, and it's able to pull it back that way. So it also implies this public, even though we can't list the files, it does imply there is a public directory which we can have read access over. And like that, we can cat index.html, and we can see that's exactly what we were reading there. And we've got this protected file area. We can ls-stack-la that. It looks like we do have read permissions over this. It is a directory, so we can cd into this protected file area. And there's this backup SSH identity files, which is compressed. We can have a look at the size of it. It's not too massive. You can see it's really not a large file at all. So in this case, it's probably one of the easiest ways you can transfer small amount of small binary files over, just base64 encoding it. So backup SSH identity files.tjz. That is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm literally just going to copy the raw base64 encoded file, and then I'm going to paste that on this side. So I'm going to move up like so, move this around. I'm going to vi base64 file. I'll paste that in there. I'm going to cat base64 file. then I'm going to pipe that into base64 decode to decode it to get the raw file, and then I'm going to output that to archive.tgz. We can see we've got that same file here. If you want to verify it's the same one, you can do an MD5 sum on both sides just to see what was it called? Sorry. Yeah, MD5 sum on backup. And we can verify, look, they've got the same hash. It's all good. We can now decompress this with tar xvf archive.tjz, and we can see it's compressed is the .ssh directory of David's user. So we can go to home, david.ssh, and we can see we've got the IDRSA, which is the SSH private key. We can cat this open just to have a look, and we can see it's encrypted. So there's a passphrase on it, which is fine. What we can do is we can go SSH tac I to specify we're using key authentication, like we're using this private key, IDRSA. The user is David at Traverxec.HackTheBox, and it asks us for the passphrase. I thought perhaps we'll go back over here and we'll see. Actually, it wasn't there. Where was it? It was. We had a password from earlier, and that was. Let me just get that back again. It was the password to his hash David. It was the password to for HTTP authentication. We cracked that now only for me, so I thought maybe that was his passphrase. We can give that one a go. We'll paste that in there. Doesn't work. We could try another thing like Traverxec. Doesn't work. So we're going to have to convert this encrypted SSH key into a hash and crack that hash again with John. So what you can do is SSH to John, and the key, the file name IDRSA. I'm just going to turn that into hash, and then we've got the hash of the SSH key, the encrypted SSH key here. There we go, and I can get rid of that one now, and probably this one here. We've got the hash of the SSH key, and you can crack this with John again. In this case, you may want to use a word list rock you, and in this case it says no hashes left to crack because I've previously done it. If you were doing this for the first time, once again it would churn through the word list and eventually crack it. We can see showing the password or the passphrase, it's Hunter. So now if we try SSH on again with the passphrase Hunter, we can log in without an issue to David. And for that reason we can now close this shell on the side. I'm going to zoom in a bit just so we get a better screen here. Like I always do when I get a new user, I mentioned this earlier, always check sudo tac L. We don't know the password, so we can do some guesses. We don't know what his sudo capabilities are. It asks us for a password. He may still have one, but we're unaware, basically. So, obviously, the user flag's there, ls-tac-la. It's owned by root in the David group. The group has read access, therefore we have read access. We can read this. I'm not going to, so I don't spoil the flag. There is this bin directory, which is interesting, and it looks like there's a server's stats.head, which we can just cat and have a look at what this is. .head, web server statistics and data collection script by David, 2019, and there's some weird ASCII art here of what looks like it's a PC and a laptop, something along those lines, maybe. And there's also this bash script here, and we can also read this, so let's have a look. And we can see bin bash, and then they're catting this file, the server stats.head. It's echoing a load of stuff, and then it's running the sudo on journalctl. So when we checked earlier, obviously we couldn't tell if we have any sudo capabilities because it was protected by a password. If this runs and this doesn't cause an error, this means we do have a sudo capability for journalctl, but we just couldn't see it earlier because it was protected by a password. So let's execute this and we'll have a look to see if we get prompted for a password or we get a you can't run a sudo error basically. Let's run this server stats.sh and we don't get an issue and we do see the results of this journalctl command here. So that means we have a capability to run journalctl, or maybe this command specifically, as root. We have that sudo capability, which is interesting. So what you may want to do after this is just go to GTFO bins. I mean, we've already got it open, and we can go to journalctl and let's have a look. Is there a capability? Journalctl, and there is a sudo capability. We can click on this, and we can see once you've run the command journalctl, you can then escape the journalctl and just use an exclamation mark and then just pop a shell straight out like that. So let's give it a go, right? In this case, we may want to just try it like this. Just say user bin sudo journalctl. We get prompted for a password, so we know that isn't right. However, if we run this whole command like so, it doesn't keep the shell. What about if we've got an issue here, which I don't think I had earlier. If I try to go N5 like this, it prompts us for the password, which is fine. I'm confused as I didn't have this issue earlier. Let's just I'm going to go out of this. I'm going to kill this session. I'm going to SSH in again and see if it still gives us this error. The password is Hunter. So if we cd into bin, if we run the server stats, we're getting this issue here, failed to change user to David. So that's making me think, was that what we got straight away last time? I'm not sure. Let's cat the server stats.sh and let's just copy the whole command. I mean, it's probably going to do it again. We get that issue and then we do it here. We're going to probably get it again. We don't this time. This is what I was looking for. So we can see in the bottom left hand corner we're still in the journalctl command. On the previous times I've run it, you could see it just ends the shell and we go back to where we were before. Here we can use the exclamation mark and then we can basically get command execution in journalctl. So we can go bin bash in this case, and we can see we now have a shell as root. I don't know why it wasn't working earlier, but it does work now, and that's all that matters. We can see we can go in the root directory. Obviously, we're running as root. We've got read permissions over the root flag, so we can solve the challenge without an issue. We've got both flags, and yeah, challenge is solved. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.